on my left, the blessing from the Pope, Father Christopher Mahar, who actually is a priest in the Diocese of Providence in the US. In 2016, he earned his PhD along with a canonical degree in theological ethics from the Catholic University of Louvain, focusing on brain injury and artificial nutrition and hydration. Wow. Okay. Yeah. He's not going to talk. Enabling and empowering our children to deal with the challenges that they are facing, which is very important to see how that can be what we are trying to do. Welcome, Rahul. Hi, I'm Raja Shanmugam. Oh, no. You are right on time. We are just introducing. We have on the left of the panel Miss Rena Michael. Yeah. She runs a institution for inclusive education called Rena Siksha Niketan. And she has been just nominated for the Indian Leadership Award for Education Excellence by All India Achievers Foundation on a national basis. Only 20 schools all over India were nominated for this award. Now, again, the context that she will bring in is not necessarily with respect to drugs, but in terms of how the schooling, the education process can bring in an environment that can be nurturing, that can be safe, that can be empowering for children even in the most difficult of circumstances that they face. So that can become a template for us as we move forward in terms of how to bring in the ability to help children grow in our system. Rahul, who just joined, thanks Rahul. I hope you had your lunch. Okay. Is the Managing Director for the Kerala Tourism Development Corporation. He was the State Project Director for the Rashtriya Madhyamik Shiksha Abhiyan. This is, he's still, okay, so you're doing dual. Okay, sorry about that. I read it from the thing. Thank you very much for correcting. So that's like the Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan's middle school.
A target of, say, 100, 200 children. Your target should be 1. So, my dear friends, I'm here to speak a few words on how to bring our children together in the environment of technology, which is rising very, very fast. I got an opportunity to see the program here. I was not here present, but I was in my house enjoying a little holiday which I don't like. And unfortunately, usually Friday is a very important day for our children, being a last day, and we have a lot of wonderful things going on in the school. But we were supposed to have very heavy rain, and that's why the school was declared holiday. But I got an opportunity to see this program because Diana had sent those clippings, and I was just looking at it, how it has been worked here. So the life has become so fast that we can sit anywhere and watch anything because of this technology. It's the same with children. Life is becoming so fast that children are also going ahead much faster than us. And that's something which is a huge drawback for us. Because I remember my grandmother who would always say that children should be children, and that's it. So instead of children being children today, the mind is changing a lot. And that's what we are seeing around now. Now, how do I come into this podium? I mean, in this platform where I have Venda is not a subject for me because of drugs. But yes, whatever we start from a very small point. Even our world also started like that. The same thing, if a youth is getting into anything, is only because from the very small age, that dot which he went through or which he experienced as a child. When I started the school, of course, it just started in a very small, humble manner. But I would like to just give a little experience of mine, which I went through on that particular day when a child was brought. Her parents and whoever takes care of the children, teachers and everybody, plays a big role. My dear teachers, if they are here, let's
also carriers. So school children are targeted in two ways. As a carrier, how they become a carrier? Because it's like a barter system. Once a person starts abusing, then they need money for that, and then they fall for that, and they don't have the money, then they are told that, okay, go and sell, and I'll give you in barter the drugs. One of the various types of drugs which are presently being used are the packeted type like ganja, and then we have the ampule injections, which all the bus stands and railway stations, all these guys do. It's all prescription drugs, but the ampule will be costing just 30 rupees, but they sell to the school children and college students for around 150 to 300 rupees. And just by selling that to somebody else, they just get 1 or 2 ampules and their life is in misery. Then we have certain types of cough syrups which are being sold near the schools, which is actually kind of intoxication. And there are new synthetic drugs and other smoking, sniffing and many other drugs which are in use. So these are the dangers with the abuse, which are the various abusing substances which children are shown. We need to safeguard the school children and make them aware, not only the students, but the teachers and the parent community as well, and also the community around the school, because that is where you come to notice that, okay, a child is out of school and he's roaming around with some old guys. Okay, there is some problem. They should communicate that to the school. So that live communication among teachers, parents and the outside community is so vital in ensuring that we flag up the issues when it come up. So awareness programs, that's a major part. I think Venda is going to be a major awareness program. And awareness programs in schools about abusive substances, the bad effects to health, social and family problems which will come up. And most of the time, most of the awareness programs don't talk about the punishment aspect. Even if it's for a small quantity, you can end up getting punished for 10 years. So punishment is something, it is very easy, it's a low-hanging fruit. So that should also be told to the students. If you end up doing this, you are in jail and your life is gone. And it's so blunt, but that is one way of ensuring that that fear factor remains. Then we need to create a group among the students, a peer group. So for example, we had a program in Ernakulam around 3 years back called Vimukti, where 10 students from each school was trained and then they were taught about substance abuse and how to ensure that their counterparts, if something happens, some behavioral changes are there, that should be flagged to the teacher and all. And that was pretty kind of successful. So creating a peer group among the students is very important. And the whistleblower, whoever it is, who tells about the behavioral imbalance of a particular child should not be, its anonymity should be there. So that is an important fact. Because unless and until the student is sure that, okay, I will not be pointed out, he will be confident enough to tell that. And parental awareness, that's very important thing. So we need to do a lot of things on that. They should be told about the seriousness of the issues. there are different kinds of parents. There are parents in government schools who are dealing with livelihood issues. For them, this doesn't matter. But nowadays, even parents with livelihood issues are sending their children to private schools. Slowly that is changing, and this government is trying to change that. However, no, because they are only concentrated on the studies part. They are not concerned about the other part. Maybe not concerned, maybe they are not aware. So parental awareness on what are the various behavioral changes. If a student gets in touch with a old age person and he's a friend of an old age guy, that is something which has to be flagged. It's not normal. And if he's getting more money than what is he being given, or he is getting stuff which he don't have money for, that is something which is to be flagged. And the timing, school timings and outside, if he spends more time with somebody else, all those things are small nitty-gritties which needs to be flagged and which needs to be raised to the next level. Unless and until we go to this micro level stuff, we'll not be able to stop all this. And also there are physiological changes which happen when substance abuse happens. So that also the parents should be aware of. And as a safe campus, in government schools, we have the Lahari Vimukta Club, where the local SI and the excise department are all part of it. There is constant review happening. And there are certain areas like tourism areas, Mr. Jose Novnik would know it better, like Kovalam and Fort Kochi, there the substance abuse. It's a pure business. Their children are always carriers and they end up being abusers and all. So in those particular areas, there need to be concentrated effort on ensuring that children don't fall prey for that. So safe campus programs on that schools needs to be strengthened with more power. And also the nearby community, as I said, should be there. And always the problem is that whenever we talk about any new issues like child abuse or substance abuse, everybody will say, okay, let's make it part of the curriculum, first thing. The SCRT director of Kerala is the person who gets the maximum number of mails for adding stuff to the curriculum. He gets at least 1,000 mails per month. So the last one he got, I just discussed with him, is that somebody has sent a mail, somebody senior position sent a mail saying that there should be a chapter on not spitting on public spaces. Of course, spitting on public spaces is bad. But then if he starts adding all this stuff directly into his book, he'll have a big book and you'll not be able to do that. So indirectly, the school education curriculum, how the pedagogy and how we do it, it's all there. But beyond that, the outright issues needs to be addressed only with the help of programs. And I'll just conclude. And when we talk about programs, let's note that most of the school children in Kerala studies in government and aided schools. Private schools are there. But unless and until we have the education department as part of it, as ma'am would know, it's a big white elephant. It's not very easy to move anything, and not because of that, because there's a curriculum structure, there are a lot of bureaucratic channels, and any new thing which needs approval will take months. And then even if you are going to do a VENDA program with the approval of the education department in a particular school, then it has to be vetted by the SCRT, then how it is going to be, the videos has to be re-edited. I know, but there are programs which are running without that, and it's running, so the government is not actually opposing it, actually silently supporting that. But then we also need to bring the actual players in the school education, the education department on board. Unless and until that is done, all the efforts, the power of the efforts will get reduced. So Diana is doing a great job in organizing this and moving forward, and I'm really thankful for her for inviting me here. And I hope that in future that this thing goes up and the whole education department starts moving towards it. Thank you.
Thanks, Rahul. Father.
Thank you, and a word of thanks to Fourth Wave for inviting me to come to the conference here today. It's a great pleasure and joy to be with you here, especially to focus on the future of the young people right here in the present moment. It's the work that we're doing. The office that I represent is a dicastery or office for promotion of integral human development. And so it's instituted by Pope Francis a year and a half ago. It's the newest and largest dicastery or office structure in the Vatican. And it focuses in a particular way on people on the peripheries. That's at the heart of Pope Francis's message and desire for his church to reach out to people on the peripheries. And so we cover migrants and refugees in Syria. We cover people that are in disastrous situations, so Catholic Relief Services, Caritas International, anybody that suffered some intense difficulties. Our dicastery covers that. But more than that, we also cover the most internal and intimate things. And so the integral human development that Pope Francis had in mind when he instituted the dicastery comes from all the previous popes, St. John Paul II, Pope Benedict XVI, even back as far as Paul VI. We're talking about integral human development, but it's a concept that goes all the way to the heart and the very beginnings of our own church and our Catholic faith. And basically, it's the worldview that has two different worlds at the same time. And so the Catholic worldview incorporates the visible world that we can see. It's obvious, it's all around us all the time. But we also incorporate the invisible world that is just as real, the spiritual world. And so in the creed that we profess as Christians, not just Catholics, but Christians throughout the world profess belief in a creator who made all things visible and invisible. And so we include both of those two things. And yet when we're here today to talk about drug addiction, drug abuse, and the scourge of drug trafficking, we have to start with the visible world. And so the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, UNODC, every year puts out an annual drug report. It gives all the stats of what's happening in the world, and the statistics are awful disturbing. They're devastating when you look at the numbers. 29.5 million people in the world, 29.5 million, are abusing drugs to the extent where they need therapy or some kind of help to get them out of it. The UNODC report goes on to say that 1 out of 6 of those people, 1 out of 6, actually gets the therapy they need. So 5 out of 6 of that 29.5 million people are not getting the therapy and the help they need to get off drugs. And the results are devastating. So disabilities, premature deaths. In the United States alone, the stats say that more people die from opioid misuse than from automobile accidents. So over 40,000 people in the United States every year die in automobile accidents. More people, most of them young people, die from opioid misuse. And so it can be so devastating, the numbers can be so daunting, that I think the response of a lot of people in the world today is to say, you know, that's just the way that it is, and we just have to learn to deal with it. And thanks be to God that what we're doing here today does not move in that direction. That's not our response. No one here today expressed that in any way possible. I do believe that there is hope. That word was used earlier today. And I'd like to focus in a particular way on that word, which is a spiritual reality. You can see the effects of hope in the visible world, but it's a spiritual virtue. It's invisible. And it challenges us to focus in a particular way on the development of integral human life that Pope Benedict XVI focused on in a particular way. Benedict XVI, in his encyclical letter, Caritas in Veritate, Charity and Truth, said that there is no authentic human development that leaves out the spiritual part. And so it's not possible to say I have a human development in the world around me if I'm ignoring the spiritual life. And so it's so essential and so important to have that development of the soul and the spiritual. One of the great writers in the English language, C.S. Lewis, said once, if you look at the world that we live in, the men and women of every denomination, not just the Christian faith, every denomination, the men and women that did the most for this world were the men and women that thought mostly of the world to come. He said, if you aim at heaven, then you'll get earth thrown in with it. If you aim only at the earth, then you'll get neither. And that's a true reality. The more we focus on just trying to make our own world a better place on our own, we realize we have limited resources. We need help from the outside. Pope Francis in 2014, in his address to the Pontifical Academy for Life on the subject of narcotics, spoke about drugs as a modern form of slavery. He said, drugs have inflicted a deep wound in our society and ensnared many people in their web. Many victims have lost their freedom and have been enslaved to them, enslaved by an addiction that we could call chemical. And he said, there's lots of reasons for that. There's the absence of family life. It's a definite factor we've talked about here today. There are social pressures. There is the propaganda and the empty promises of drug dealers that are constantly telling people, this will make you feel better, it'll make your life better. But he said, one of the things that we have to focus on in a particular way is the invisible reality of the soul. And what he said was quite powerful. He said, every drug addict, every one, has a unique personal story and must be listened to, understood, loved, and insofar as possible, healed and purified. We cannot stoop, he said, to the injustice of categorizing drug addicts as if they were mere objects or broken machines. Each person must be valued and appreciated in his or her dignity in order to enable them to be healed. He said the dignity of the person is what we are called to seek out. They continue to possess more than ever a dignity as children of God. So even in the midst of addiction, even in the midst of a life that seems to be ruined, he's saying these are not broken objects. These are persons created in the image and likeness of God. And that's the vision of Pope Francis. I would conclude with that for integral human development. That we are created for greatness. We're created for glory. We're created for great things. And to eliminate the focus of the spiritual and to see only this world, to see only the material, visible reality, is to lose out on the full development of the human person, what we're all called to be. And I conclude with this quote from Pope Benedict XVI. He says, it's a development that requires new eyes and a new heart, capable of rising above a materialistic vision of human events and capable of glimpsing in development the beyond that technology cannot give. By following this path, it is possible to pursue the integral human development that takes its direction from the driving force of charity in truth. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Father.
Friends, thank you very much, Diana, for having me over here. I will go right into the subject. We all know that the schools are having an alarming rise in the number of students who are taking to drugs and substance abuse. And even more saddening is the fact that the number of girls among them is also increasing. So it's high time we sit up and look at things and try to bring about a change. And the change has to be a holistic one. We are talking about giving children a wholesome environment in schools. I would like to draw your attention to the Right of Children to Free and Compulsory Education Act, which was a legislation of Government of India and being implemented all over India in all the states of India. In Kerala, as was mentioned earlier, I was responsible after retirement as a commission to formulate the rules. So the rules we made have been a little more elaborate in the sense that we tried to bring in all the criteria that would bring about a holistic development of the child within the school. It did not mean just improvement in the quality of education. Kerala, we already have all our children in schools, so we do not have a problem of bringing them in. The problem is to give them quality education, not just in terms of school books and curriculum and their textbooks, etc. It also meant the full development of the student. And that is why the rules talk about providing them an environment where they get counseling, where they get remedial teaching, where they get opportunities to play, where they get openings in arts and crafts and music. So these are all there on paper. We also have the need for every teacher to maintain a file on each of her children or students, not just the academic part, but also the child's personality and behavioral growth, called CCE, where you have a comprehensive development, the evaluation of the child's curricular and co-curricular development. But what is exactly what's happening in our schools? We start to look at schools where we have a group of children where the parents are always pressurizing them to do very well and get marks better, higher than the other child. We also have a system where the teachers are not as committed, I'm talking in a very generalistic manner, are not as committed as earlier. I have heard teachers say, a child comes to my class in class 5, the child doesn't know even the alphabets. The child doesn't have the level of even a 3rd grade student. But I continue with my 5th grade teaching because that's what I'm asked to do. Now we have a section which requires the teacher to take remedial coaching, to give that child remedial teaching. Because you continue giving pushing the child up, all promotion is one of the curses we have inherited. You promote every child till he reaches the board exams in class 10. So what happens when the child fails and cannot cope with the board exams? You can do 2 things. You can allow everyone to pass again. You get 99% pass percentage. But the fact remains that the child who has completed 10th class still cannot write a single sentence either in the mother tongue or in English without a mistake. So this is where you need to look at the teacher's dedication, improving the teacher's commitment to her children. And when you look at the child who is unable to cope in the class, what does a child do? That child looks for other avenues because he or she needs to keep occupied. And then when you don't have games, you don't have teachers for all schools do not have teachers for physical education. All schools do not have teachers for arts and crafts and music. You share teachers in the government schools, and most of the aided schools, which form the majority of our this education sector, do not have teachers in these particular subjects. So what happens? The child has no opportunity to show his or her talents in other fields. So I may be poor in maths or physics or chemistry or whatever, but if I am a good singer, if I am a good sports person, if I am a good crafts person, then that gives me a high. That makes me feel good. And as Father said just now, we are made for goodness, we are made for greatness. You don't have that, and then you feel I am nobody. And that is a gap which is spoken about earlier, the gap which Raja spoke about earlier. Somebody else also mentioned it. The gap is there. And where do you fill it? Somebody comes with the drug. I remember when I was district collector in Kollam, there was a school teachers who told me that children always rush to a certain shop to buy soft drinks. And they said they found something funny about it. We checked it because I was a district collector, we got it checked. And we found that that guy was lacing it with some substance. And that was why the children were making a beeline for that particular fellow who was selling those. And we got that removed. But again, this means the teacher has to be vigilant. If that profile of the child, I spoke about CCE, if the teacher was maintaining that profile of the child on a weekly, monthly basis, the teacher would know the behavioral changes in the child, the lack of interest, the change of friends, the child sitting in the last bench, coming late to class. Things would have been so obvious, but our teachers do not write their profile of the child properly as required. There's no authority who looks into this. So therefore, you find a child slipping. So I hope RMSA will push it up to see whether you have these things done properly. We also need to bring in games for children where you don't need much land for football. I know I love football. Children want to play football. In some places you just cannot have football. He spoke about sports. Sam spoke about sports. So it is volleyball. It may be just running, just for the heck of it and enjoying it. So many things can be had in our schools, but we need teachers, we need authorities who take up interest. We have a school health program. If the school health program was functioning properly, again a cue for you. If the school health program, we had a health card. The rules for this act maintains that you need to have a school health card. If you have a school health card, things like the drug use could be, you can find out of these things. And the excise department needs you a little more proactive not only in finding out people who are using alcohol while driving, they need to have some machine which will help you find out whether a person is on drugs. Now that also needs to be used in a larger way. And we need to, as earlier we mentioned in the media, they spoke about highlighting achievements. Mathrubhumi has Nanma, it has Seed, and various newspapers, they just maybe to promote their circulation, whatever. But still they have programs for children. Why can't we have certain sections just for success stories, where we have children who have done well, not just in studies, but also in other things, not only agriculture, in arts and crafts, in sports, in speaking, in helping the community. Well, children need to feel good when they know that they are recognized. So I think, and also, can we bring up stories of parents who have helped their children come out from drugs, who have kept their children away from drugs, and from children who are willing to share their experiences. Keep them anonymous, but at least the stories should be there, the narratives should be there. We need to have schools which will use the statutory authorities, go to the district administration, go to the police, go to the excise department, use your local bodies to change and remove all these, temptations for children, where they can easily, when the availability of drugs, when they get into contact with peddlers, and when they are used as peddlers. So these things can be nipped in the bud if teachers are vigilant, parents are vigilant, and if there's closer contact between parents and their own children, and between children and the teachers. Teachers are now very afraid to confront students. Teachers are afraid to correct the children or discipline the students, because our children are so sensitive. The moment they get scolded, they refuse to come to school, they complain against the teacher. Some of them even take the drastic measure of ending their lives. We have so many stories. And what happens? The entire school, the teacher, etc., everybody have to take the blame. We have had many when I worked also in women protection, child protection, sexual violence against children and women, we find that the more you develop tourism, the more you need to be vigilant. Because I know of many schools where even young boys just drop out of school during the high tourism season. They just are paid huge amounts to keep company with adults, men especially, and this is something which we would call sex tourism, which needs to be curbed. And teachers are the first. Usually most of the mothers are happy when the money comes in. They don't bother to ask, or they're too afraid to ask. We need to, the teachers, church authorities, at least in Kerala, where church authorities are quite a strong force to reckon with, they could be used for this. Why don't we use the resources we have? At least to alert, if you cannot go directly, I don't think any priest will feel bold enough to go and report to the police that here is a shop selling that. But you could use the collective strength of the community to complain. Use a local body. I have tried this in some places, it has worked. We don't have time. Moderator must have me stop now. So, we have peer support, somebody mentioned it here, very important. And Ernakulam and Thrissur, Kozhikode have got excellent examples of student police cadets. And it was started by a police officer who named it Our Responsibility to Children. And what happened? Students began to take up the role of mentors of their own friends, their own classmates. And they began to help them come out of this. So this is something we have to encourage to a larger extent all over the place. And I think at least RMSA and the new program should accredit good NGOs who can work hand in hand with you in our adolescent good health of adolescents. There are so many NGOs in our state, people who can do very good work. Let us use them. I think you have to take a leaf from the experience of Karnataka and Tamil Nadu. I know very closely that they use NGOs to a very large extent because they have parameters. The work is set out for them and they do the work for you. They report to you. So you have no problem. They won't take credit. They won't take the credit. They will help you. Well, if they deserve credit, please give them. But otherwise, they are willing to work. Use them. I think we need not work in compartments anymore because children are our greatest asset. And I can go on forever, so I have to stop now. Children, women, all these are my pet subjects. But we need to invest in our children, make them feel responsible, and most of all, we need to feel responsible for our children. As one of our presentations, the accountability is on the society. If one child goes wrong, if one child uses drugs, it means that I and you have failed them. It's not just the parents. It's the whole of society. I think it's high time we take that. And as all our father said a little while ago, we are all made for goodness. We are made to be good people and to share in the big goodness, the great good. So it is our duty, those of us who are so privileged to be sitting here and talking about the others, they are us. They are us. Let us keep it that way. And when we go out from here, Diana, please have a real action plan. Rope in all people who are here and ask them to be with you whenever you go. And the government, I'm sure, I'm actually planning to meet the education minister with some of my thoughts. I hope he will listen to me. And because I have done some things before like this. I go with the project, talk to them, and fortunately, people listen. So I hope, please pray that when I talk to the Minister of Education regarding certain things which disturb all of us in the education sector, some of them get done. Thank you very much, and I hope this function gives all success.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Been a wonderful sharing of different perspectives and different angles. And I'm also encouraged by some of the direction that you are given for Rahul to take and possibly for the rest of the establishment. There's a lot of work from our side that we need to help in terms of giving the inputs and all that, and we'll work with them. And thank you, Father, also for giving the divine perspective of, in a way it sort of connects to what Swaroop was talking about. Look inside, right? So when you're getting onto that, it's not just dealing with what's out, it's also dealing with what's inside. And that comes through the definition of spirituality and the aspect of non-discriminative way of dealing with children that you brought about. And it applies to children with disability. It applies to children with any other aspect, because discrimination happens in multiple different levels. And that itself causes some of this stuff. I've been given multiple signals from the backstage that time is over, time is over, time is over. There are two questions that have come, and I'm not going to take more questions from the WhatsApp. One question on what do you think schools can do proactively to make a safe environment? I think ma'am has answered very effectively in her presentation. So I don't think we need to take that. There's only one other question. I don't know whether Rahul can take this in 2 seconds. Why has government set aside 300 crore dedicated to substance abuse among adolescents? 300 lakhs. Okay, 3 crores. Okay. So, okay, less money. Okay. Fair enough. So this is just right now it's just token amount to sort of take it up. Okay. Fair enough. Then the next part of it maybe still exploratory. It says, is it because they have numbers and what is in plan? Maybe this itself is to fund the planning process and the exploratory process. Thank you very much for your patient listening. I know it's been a tough post-lunch session, but I'm amazed at so many people still kept awake during our conversation. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of the session. Bye.
Thank you, Raja, and all the panelists. Next, we have a panel on child-centric approach to prevention, care, and recovery. Moderating the panel will be Father Kuriakos Pallikonel, Director, Don Bosco Counseling and Youth Services, Ernakulam. He is a member of the Juvenile Justice Board, Ernakulam District, Kerala, with a doctorate in psychology, life skills counseling, masters in holistic psychological counseling. He is specialized in educational counseling with a diploma in entrepreneurship and has 19 years of working experience as a youth director, trainer, counselor, and coordinator. He established the Rehabilitation Center for Street Children in Bangalore, rural district. So I kindly welcome Father Kuriakos to the stage.
Good afternoon. We are in the second session of the afternoon, and we had already seen many stars on the galaxy throughout this day, having made their mark in education, health, and other service areas. And today, for this session, we have another constellation from the galaxy. I would introduce the speakers one by one as they are about to speak, so that the face and the descriptions remain more close to our hearts. So our panelists, some of them have just arrived, so I just want to check with them who would like to speak first. Yeah. Okay, Dr. Harish Pillai says he likes to be the opening batsman. Having been a chief executive officer, spent more than a decade in hospital operations, Doctor has a lot to share with us about the innovation that he has brought about in the health sector. He's also been very influencing the larger community in a big way through his membership in the Joint Commission International for Standards in the International Advisory Panel. He's also a current convener of Healthcare Panel of Confederation of Indian Industries, the Kerala State Council, and also past chairman of Board of Directors of New Cairo British International School, Egypt, and past president of the Indian Community Association of Egypt. He's been featured among the top 25 healthcare influencers in India by the Healthcare Executive magazine in 2015, and won the Best CEO of the Year award at the CMO National Awards for Healthcare Excellence. So let's give him a hand and let's listen to him. You have 6 minutes, Doctor.
Perfect. So thank you all for having me. My journey in Kochi started, I guess, 5 years back. So I came all the way from Egypt. I was the CEO of Egypt's largest hospital for 7 years. I also claim to be the only hospital CEO who has run a hospital in the midst of a revolution. And in the Arab world, if you look at it, I find Egypt a real country, because the rest of the GCC all look like bubble economies, looks artificial. I love Egypt when I compare with a developing country. Like you have a large middle. In Egypt had thin middle class, extreme poverty, and then you have the super rich. But when it comes to the subject which we are going to debate on, there's a huge problem in terms of orphans. Huge amount of orphans on the streets of Cairo, and abuse, not just substance abuse, all kinds of abuses. The population in Cairo is. And it's such a taboo subject in a very conservative environment, which is 90% Sunni Muslims and officially 10% Coptic Christians, but unofficially 19% Copts. That's an issue. When I am a son of the soil, I'm from Kerala. So when I had an opportunity to build Astamed City, I came back, and I normally study history, culture, before I decide to take up responsibilities to build a hospital. So interesting aspects about demographics of our state. I always found the state of Kerala to be an outlier. When you look at demographics, the only state with the reverse sex ratio, more women than men, which is supposedly good from a social indicator point of view. We have a large amount of disease patterns. We have a tsunami of diseases. Life expectancy is amazing, #1 in the country, but also #1 in terms of geriatrics. We have 4.5 million Malayalis today above the age of 60. On the other side of the spectrum, when I look at birth indicators, it's about 1.75 is the fertility rate. I compare to the UK, Canada and United States, which is 2, and in our neighborhood, Singapore is 1.25. So it's a state which is going towards a net replacement ratio in terms of demographics. What does that got to do with our subject? What I'm trying to explain to you is that social changes across decades have been very transformative. The joint family system, what we had in the 40s and the 30s and all, it's all gone. Now we are talking about not just nuclear families, we're talking about sub-nuclear families. So when I came here to Kerala and Kochi to build Astamed City, one of our prime focus was that, yes, it's a quaternary care center looking and addressing the needs of our community in terms of cardiac or, the high-end departments. But my pet topic was child and adolescent health. We said that we are going to have one of the largest child and adolescent programs in the state of Kerala because there is a need of a community, and we are also seeing urbanization. Kerala, I would say, is the first urban state. There are no so-called villages anymore in Kerala. So because of this urbanization state, you have this double income families. The husband and the wife, both of them are employed. So little time for the children, and mostly it's one child nowadays. And we were quite surprised. Like in my facility in Kochi, I have 33 pediatricians across 15 subspecialties. And so we focus on general pediatrics. We have a very good counseling team. We are into developmental sciences. We cover the entire spectrum of child and adolescent health program. The worry which we had within 1 year is the type of patients coming to our hospital. You have mostly I would say from the 8th graders to the 12th standard graders. So it's like pre-teens and adolescent spectrum of patients coming to meet the general pediatricians. And some of the things, and that's when the eyeballs started opening up that we are such a hypocritical society. And that is so alarming because, hey, we are supposed to be the most evolved. I call saying that Malayalis are Buddhijeevis, right? It's a land of Buddhijeevis, all of us. 100% literacy. We claim pride in all the so-called things. And how can this be happening in right underneath our noses and nobody wants to talk about it? There is a kind of, some kind of a taboo which spreads across the spectrum, right from all of us in society to our leadership. Nobody wants to acknowledge data and facts, what we are seeing within ourselves. When I'm not only referring to substance abuse. One of the largest perpetrators of abuse is our family structure. That the kind of abuse, physical abuse, mental abuses which vulnerable populations are facing within family structures in our state is alarming. And I don't know, like when you talk about healthcare data, like for example cancer, we talk about cervical cancer and breast cancers. We are the 3rd highest in the country per capita incidence of new cancers after Northeast India. If you look at risk, age stratified mortality for coronary artery disease, we are #1 in the country. Younger Malayalis die of coronary artery disease compared to rest of India. So all these data points out that we have an issue which we need to find a solution to. So first aspect which I would like to talk about is acknowledge that you have a problem. Anywhere we go and ask for data, there is no data. We don't have a statewide population-based data. We have an institution-specific data. But there is no concept of public and private sector collaboration. There is also the challenge which we face in Kerala that we have this, it's a legacy of this Nehruvian socialist legacy in India that where if you're in the public sector, you're holy and you're good. If you're in the private sector, you are a vampire. You're an exploitative guy trying to suck out money out of the poor patient who's so humble, and that's the whole perception. So when you go into a discussion or a dialogue with colleagues in the public sector, you already have prejudice because you're from the private sector, because you are a bourgeois, exploitative guy. So how do you even have a conversation with that kind of prejudice? So it's a huge challenge in our state to have a dialogue with stakeholders. What we have done is something out of the box. Our leads in pediatric have been social advocates. Our former chief of pediatric services, also a chief of medical, Dr. Alexander Chacko, he was so passionate about this subject that he was an advocate against abuse. He used to write his columns in the Indian Express and large, and he ensured that our entire clinical program is approached towards community engagement. We started engaging with schools, both public schools and private schools, to go and talk to them at early ages. And one of the most important discoveries what we had is that to remove, we can't underestimate children today. I am from the generation, I'm from the sandwich generation. I call myself the sandwich generation. I'm pre-color television, pre-mobile phone, pre-email. I'm the generation from 1965 to 1975. Anyone born after 1975, they are, all totally comfortable with emails and mobile phones. It's totally different. The point I'm trying to say is the maturity level of kids nowadays, we can't underestimate. It's not like of the sandwich generation. Children are quite aware. I have 1 minute more. So one important aspect of stakeholders in all of us together is to have frank conversations, whether it's to do with sex, it's to do with early signs of substance abuse within our own families. You could extend that conversation in a larger forum, maybe in schools, hospitals, wherever there you have the father or the parent type of figure, where somebody authoritative can tell them that these are early signs where you need not go into that kind of thing. Third thing is that because of this curse of the mobile phone, the smartphone, that entire addictive phenomenon, you're just, my friend Swaroop, he ran a beautiful campaign for us on certain abuses. The campaign was so simple. To give you an example, we ran a campaign which said that there was this beautiful little girl celebrating her birthday. She was gifted a mobile phone, the end. It's a short story. And it's a short story which was just put up on all the hoardings. The message is so simple that addiction in all its form is terrible. It's a repetitive kind of thing, and I guess we all need to put our hands together to, first of all, talk about it. That's the first step. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Harish Pillai, about that very quick and elaborate letting us into the many innovative moves that you made from the hospital sector on behalf of adolescents and the younger population, and becoming also very active advocates for the young population in the community. Now we have Linda Nilsson addressing us. She is the Secretary General of the World Federation Against Drugs. And as Secretary General, she is responsible for coordinating the views and representation of the World Federations, over 200 members across the world, including our own VENDA. Drawing from the experience of the membership base, she brings together best practices in all sectors: prevention, treatment, and social integration. And she told me previously that she will particularly stress the prevention area. She is also a member of the European Commission Expert Group, Civil Society Forum on Drugs, and the Global Voice of Prevention in the Civil Society Task Force on Drugs, the official liaison between United Nations and the civil society in the process for higher level meetings in 2019. She hails from Gothenburg, Sweden, and she has also made it possible for representatives of VENDA, particularly Diana, to be on the panel of the board of directors of this esteemed body, the General World Federation Against Drugs. So she's come all the way from Sweden to address us. So let's tune all our ears to Linda.
Thank you so much. It's a great honor for me to be here, and I will try to be brief and very short. And if I'm not short enough, you have to stop me. We're in India, so even though I arrived very late yesterday, I am very happy to be here, and I've been met by so many nice people and I feel very comfortable here. So thank you very much for inviting me and for allowing me to say a couple of words here at this very important fora. How do I do to get this up? Should I just duplicate, maybe? Ah, good. It was very simple. So I would just like to say a couple of words about WFAD and what we are trying to do, what we are trying to prioritize. And as